welcome back to another math lesson. We're going to be working on chapter 9.2 or lesson 9.2 in the Go Math the fourth grade Go Math book. And it's going to be on page 363. So if you have your Go Math book, go ahead and grab it and follow along. But before we get to the actual Go Math part, we're going to do a little bit on place value before we actually dive in. So just hang tight. I'm going to go over something really fast on my whiteboard, and then we will go to the book right after that. So let's go ahead and do that now. Okay, so in our Go Math book, we are learning about hundredths and how they relate to decimals. So what I'm talking about is, like 1/100th, so the fraction with 1 over 100, and how it relates to a decimal number. So in this case, 1/100th is the same as saying 0 and 100th, or 0.01. Now, the part that I'm going to talk about place value is actually right here. So let's go ahead and erase this, and let's write down just a random number. Let's just do 1, 2, 3, and then 4, 5, right? So we have 123 and 45 hundredths, or 123.45. Now, in previous lessons, we have learned that the 3 is in the ones place. That is something that we know. We know it for a fact. We also know that our 2 is in the tens place. That is also nothing new. And last but not least, we have our 1, which is in the hundreds place. I emphasize the dreads part because we're going to be working with these numbers that sound very similar. These place values can sound very much alike. However, we are working with, yesterday we worked with the tenths place. Notice that we have a TH on the end, so it's not the tens, it's the tenths place. The tenths place, the TH tells us that it is parts of a whole, not a whole. And today, we're going to work with the hundredths place. Hundredths. So, again, make sure we put that TH on the end, letting us know that we're working with parts and not an actual whole number. So again, our hundredths place goes two spots away from the decimal. So 1, 2. Our tens place is the first spot after the decimal. Then we have our ones, our tens, and our hundreds. So this hopefully will be helpful to you if you write this down, put it somewhere, because it'll be useful in today's lesson, especially this one in purple. Let me emphasize that for you. Let me circle it. That is what we're working on today. So I'm going to go ahead and erase this, and then we are going to bring out our Go Math books. Here we are. Right here, lesson 9.2, relate hundredths and decimals. You can see on page 363 right here in the bottom right corner. Let's go ahead and bring it back to the top, and let's unlock this problem. So the problem says in the 2008 Summer Olympics, the winning time in the men's 100-meter butterfly race was only 1/100th second faster than the second place time. What decimal represents this fraction of a second? You can write hundredths as fractions or decimals. Very true. You can also write, any fraction as a fraction or decimal. So it says, one way, use a model and a place value chart. So let's start with the fraction, because that's something we've been working with. We know, we understand. So they give us a flat here, right? And a flat has 100 squares inside. In fact, let's get nice and zoomed on this problem. So we have our flat, and we are shading 1/100th of the model. Well, we know there are 100 squares in a flat, so what we're going to do is we're just going to shade one of those. We're just shading in the numerator. So the way we write this would simply be 1/100th, right? And we read it as 1/100th. Now, as a decimal, it's going to be written a little bit differently. It says complete the place value chart. 1/100th is 1/100th. So we have the ones place. Obviously, we don't have a whole number anywhere, so there's 0 there. Then we put our decimal point. Now, to have a number in our tenths place, we would have to have at least 10 of these shaded. But because we don't have 10 shaded, there are none in the tenths place, which means we only have one small box shaded, which means that we have 1/100th. So it would be written as 0.01 or read as 1/100th. And that's how you turn, hundredths into decimals. So let's go ahead and do it another way. Let's drop down here to the bottom part of the page. It says, another way, use a number line. Label the number line with equivalent decimals. Locate the point 1/100th. Okay, well, obviously we're not going to label every single hash mark on here because that would turn into us writing 100 different numbers. 200 because we're doing fractions and decimals. So we're not going to do all that. We are going to label every 10 though. So as we can see, we have some blue boxes down here on the bottom. So we're going to complete our number line before we solve the problem. So we have 0/100ths equals 0. 10/100ths equals 10/100ths. Or actually, it equals 1/10. If you'll notice this, 10/100ths is the same as saying 1/10. Because when we have numbers like this, we can cover up those zeros because they're just placeholders, right? So you see how I'm doing that? You still see that 1/10? Because if we have 10 tens, then we have 100. So 1/10 would be, or 1/10 of 100, or would be 10. So we have 1/10, 2 tenths, or 20 hundredths. And then we have 30 hundredths, or 3 tenths. We have 40 hundredths, or 4 tenths. We have 50 hundredths, or 5 tenths. We have 60 hundredths, or 6 tenths. We have, 70 hundredths, or 7 tenths. We have 80 hundredths, or 8 tenths. And we have 90 hundredths, or 9 tenths. And we can also confirm our tenths, talk, because all these numbers are in the tenths place. So, speaking of that, notice that when we are writing this, we're not putting the 90 in the hundredths place. We're putting it in the tenths place and then creating the 90 by having the 0 in the hundredths place. So when you have a number, like, let's say 90 hundredths, the last number of this, so let's say it's 87. The 7 is going to be the one that goes in the hundredth place. So you can see the 0 goes in the hundredths place. Again, if we had a number like 87 over 100, 87 hundredths, you would also write it as a decimal. That 7 goes in the hundredths place. So the last number of your numerator is what goes into the place value that you're talking about. This one being hundredths. So anyways, I got a little sidetracked there. Let's go back. We're locating the point of 1/100th, which is this very first dot. I'm going to make it bigger so we can see it there. And it says, blank names the same amount as 1/100th. Well, it's going to be 0.01, or 1/100th names the same amount as 1/100th. You'll notice I'll say 0.01 for the decimal, just so we know we're talking about the decimal rather than the fraction. Otherwise, it's just I'm saying the same thing because going back up here, read 1/100th, 1/100th, kind of gets confusing. So I will be using that 0.01 or whatever the number is to identify the decimal. So the winning time was 1/100th of a second faster. Okay, so let's go ahead and turn the page. And, let's get this all nice and situated. And let's solve this problem here. It says Alicia won her 400-meter freestyle race by 4 and 25 seconds. How can you write this mixed number as a decimal? Shade the model to show 4 and 25 hundredths. Okay, let's get a color pencil out so we can shade this and show that it is, in fact, something different. In fact, let me get a color pencil that's somewhat sharpened. Sorry that my face is so close to the camera. There we go. Okay, so first thing, we have a whole number that is 4. So we're going to completely shade in 4 of these flats. That color showing up on the camera? Kind of. You know what? Let's try, I have a darker color available. Let's do this blue color. That's better. There we go. So we're going to completely shade in 4 of these flats to get our 4, right? Because that's a whole number. So, and it doesn't need to be perfect, doesn't need to be beautiful, we need to know that these are all shaded. So that's 1, 2, 3, and this is number 4. Okay, so 4 flats completely shaded in. Next, we have 25 hundredths. Well, we know one of these flats has 100 squares, so we need to shade 25 of them. So we're going to go ahead and shade 1, 2 of these rows completely because each one is 10, so that's 20. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 boxes. So your shading should look something like this. And now we're going to write it as a decimal. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to put our whole number in front in the ones place, write our decimal, and then write our, what our fraction would be. So because we have 25 hundredths, we're going to write our 2 in the tens place because that is 20, and then we have 5 hundredths, so we have 4 and 25 hundredths, or 4.25. So this one says to complete the place value chart. And actually, I don't know if I was supposed to write this as a fraction or a decimal, but these are both equal to each other. Yeah, so decimal, it says, oh, I was supposed to write as a mixed number. I jumped ahead. I'm so sorry. It's okay, though. It says, complete the place value chart. Think and look at the model. 4 25 hundredths is 4 wholes, 2 tenths, and 5 hundredths. So we have 4 wholes because we have 1, 2, 3, 4. And then tenths, we have 2 tenths, which are right here. I'm going to put that line right there, right? They add up to 2 tenths. And then these last 5, which are right here, are our 5 hundredths. So that is written as 4.25 or 4 and 25 hundredths. And the way you read it, the way you say it properly is 4 and 25 hundredths. Remember to put that TH on hundredths because 2500 and 25 hundredths are 2 completely different numbers. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at this number line way next. Let me fix my camera again. It says, label the number line with equivalent mixed numbers in decimals. Locate the point 4 and 25 hundredths. Okay, first things first, we got to finish our number line. So we have 4 and 10 hundredths, 4 and 20 hundredths, 4 and 30, and it keeps going up by 10 hundredths each time. So let's go ahead and write that. So we have 4 and 10 hundredths, 4 and 20 hundredths, 4 and 30 hundredths, 4 and 40 hundredths, 4 and 50 hundredths, 4 and 60 hundredths, 4 and 70 hundredths, 4 and 80 hundredths, And last but not least, 4 and 90 hundredths. Notice also, once we get to 4 and 90 hundredths, the next step is 5. So if we add 10 more hundredths, we get another whole number. It would be 100 hundredths. So instead of having 4 and 100 hundredths, we just combine it to make it a whole number, and it turns into 5. So, going back, we have our 4 and 25 hundredths. We've already written it up top. We know it. We're going to write it again as 4 and 25 hundredths. Mark it beautifully on this number line right here. And let us know that 4 and 25 hundredths, or 4.25, names the same amount as 4 and 25 hundredths written as a fraction. So, Alicia won her race by 4.25 seconds, or 4 and 25 hundredths seconds. Ooh, my goodness. Sorry, my computer, I thought it turned off. We're good. We're still recording. And that is it. That is how you identify hundredths as a decimal. Now, this video will be posted on Edpuzzle. So, actually, let's go ahead and talk for a second. I will be putting this video on Edpuzzle. There will be a few questions at the end of it. So please stick around till the very end of the video. So that you may answer the questions. There's probably going to be about 6. So answer those, and then once you have answered those questions, go ahead and turn in this assignment. And with that being said, have a great day.